many sex workers are in the downtown east side or in Vancouver. You can get a clue if you look at the back of the Georgia Straight or in the Yellow Pages or on Craigslist. But because these individuals have been labeled criminals, they're not going to identify. It's a lot more than people think.
There's an obvious class system that exists today. Everything from the survival sex trade. And then you get to the high-end escorts at the other end of the spectrum, making, what, $20,000 a night? And everything in between. And those escorts, they're legitimized almost. I mean, they're paying business taxes.
They didn't all come from bad homes, and they didn't all come from abuse. They come from all walks of life. And each one has their own individual reason. There's not just one reason why a woman ends up working on the street.
The women that I've worked with for the number of years that I've worked at Rape Relief have all told me that they wouldn't have chosen it if they had some other option, if they could get better welfare, if they thought that they'd be able to feed their kids some other way.
So one of the things that's been really interesting about the history of the sex trade in Vancouver is this battle back and forth between idealists and pragmatists. The idealists have big dreams, they want to see the world a certain way, and things like prostitution don't fit in that worldview and they want to get rid of it. That's, pretty fundamental. But then you've got the pragmatists that say, well, prostitution's always going to be there. There's always going to be a market for that kind of thing. So if it's going to be there, then better to manage it. Better to just accept it and find a way to deal with it. And that conflict goes back and forth through the city's history.
I don't really think that there is an improvement, particularly in the lives of sex workers. I think that there are different lives are lived by different people within the sex industry, because if you work indoors or if you work in a massage parlor, you may have more protection from violence than if you work out on the street.
How we make women safe is we give them choices, welfare, better welfare, childcare, exit services, those kinds of things.
I think the only real thing that would improve the health and safety of women who are in prostitution right now is concrete things like housing, childcare, a livable income, and women-only detox beds.
Our relationship with the Vancouver Police Department has improved extraordinarily over the last 5 years. We have a much, much better relationship with them. Bad dates are taken much more seriously now. Some prosecutions have happened as a result of bad date reporting, so things have really changed. It's extremely unfortunate that it took the brutal murders of that many sex workers to get them to change, and we're still certainly calling for a public inquiry into the missing women's issue. But that's been a really extraordinary change.
There's terrible violence perpetrated towards people who work in the street-level sex work, and I don't think that that's changed at all. The one thing that I think has improved is that I think perhaps the police are more responsive than they were, particularly when all the women were going missing and were murdered. I think that they have improved the police situation considerably since then, when they had 1.5 people working in missing persons, and now they have about 6.
If you are a prostitute and one of your customers or potential customers commits an act of violence against you, contacting the police isn't always as easy as it should be inside of your mind, I guess.
We do not support a decriminalization for prostitution. We feel that it would be legalizing or decriminalizing violence against women. We feel it would open the floodgates for men to freely buy sex, and we don't think it's safe for women, and we don't think it respects women's autonomy.
Pay Society is in favor of the full decriminalization of sex work. We believe that it would allow sex workers control over their work and their work environments, to regulate their own industry, give them access to occupational health and safety standards, BC labor relation codes, and it would also eliminate a lot of the harms associated with sex work that have to do with its criminalization.
Why we don't support the decriminalization of prostitution in Canada as it stands right now, or how it's being promoted in the courts. There's 2 legal challenges right now in court, one from Ontario and one from Vancouver that Pivot Society is heading up, is because it's wanting to decriminalize, arguing for the decriminalization of the men, the buyers and the sellers of women. We absolutely agree with decriminalizing the women that are in prostitution, but not the men, and not those who are responsible for the exploitation of children and women.
Well, I personally do support decriminalization of the sex trade. I think that I can't speak for our board of directors because we have varying points of view on decriminalization, but from my point of view, nobody should be criminalized for the work that they do.
I feel that people in the sex industry would really benefit from decriminalization because it would give them a chance to be more normal, I guess.
I don't support a red light district in Canada or in Vancouver more specifically, and there has been a lot of talk about creating a cooperative brothel or a red light district, particularly for the Olympics, which are coming.
I don't really think a red light district is the way to go at all. People live and work all over this city in every other way. You know, if they work for the buses or they work as postal workers or whatever, they aren't, you know, put into one area. So why would sex workers be put into one area and ghettoized in that way?
We think it would be detrimental for Vancouver to have a red light district. It would basically support the expansion of the prostitution industry.
PACE isn't really in favor of a red light district because it tends to ghettoize sex work, and we just don't think that's a great idea.
I think that making it a red light district might be a move in the wrong direction. I think it might be more beneficial to encourage smaller, decentralized like massage parlors or brothels as opposed to one centralized location.
I can't say no and I can't say yes because I'm personally not educated enough on the topic.
Oh, I think the questions are good. I think that the questions that you've asked definitely can lead to lots of discussion. I can stand up. Nor can I sit down. And I cry.